Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, olúwa mi ò dìde ojú
The Ashen Forge. The Ashen Forge.
Hello and welcome to the Ashen Forge. I am Phantom X, joined as always by Diggs and the legendary Neurotoxin. How y'all doing?
Great.
All right.
Sleepy.
What'd you say, Diggs?
Sleepy.
Oh, they said creepy. It's like, huh?
No, sleepy.
Because they stole our hour? Is that why you're sleepy?
No, because I was playing Nightingale until 5 a.m. and then
Yeah, that'll do it.
got up at 9 or something like that, or 10, and started playing again.
What the hell were you doing in Nightingale till 5 a.m.?
Having fun.
I mean,
Yeah,
all due respect, fun is limited.
I'm still trying to get my tavern situated the way I want it. And I've got 2 characters to work on, not just one. So I'm just getting around to. I did some watch stuff, but yeah. Oh, I'm upgrading my. I'm just getting around to upgrading my stations to excellent. My crafting stations to excellent. So doing some of that.
Oh, you did finally. Well, we got plenty to chat about. There's interestingly a lot of forum chatter's been really high in the last Diggs, month, 2 months. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of new people jumping into the forum for whatever reason. So a lot of posts, although a lot of it's kind of regurgitated stuff over the years, but plenty to still talk about. Like I said, everybody's still been having fun in Nightingale. I think there's some potential crossover with Ashes of Creation, hopefully in crafting anyways.
But that's what I wanted to talk about, was the crafting and how that relates to Ashes and freeholds and not freeholds and all that stuff. Normally, I don't enjoy survival games, and I'm loving the hell out of Nightingale. It's like one of my top 3 games of all time, probably. And normally, I don't think of myself as a builder or even do much decoration in the games that I play, which are typically mmorpgs. But I'm actually able to build in this game and build something that looks kind of good, and then decorate it somehow that I want it to make sense and look kind of good. And I'm decorating for mostly visual aesthetics and not for all the bonuses that everything can get. But that works too. Also reminds me, one of the reasons that I love playing these games is so I can go multiplayer. So not so that I can be in battles with everybody else, so I can see what everybody else is doing. So I love going over to Phantom X's area and see how he's decorated, and his is like turned into a giant sprawling mansion castle thingamabob. And then seeing how Neurotoxins is different. And the 3 of us have very different, distinct play styles when it comes to not only setting up our stations, but also how we're building our stations. I think there's a there's a real curve of, I think, in terms of size, Phantom's got the biggest, and I've got mine is like very tiny and compact, and Neuro is somewhere in the middle. And then in terms of the utility of things, Neuro is extremely utilitarian from what I can tell. And I'm not at all. And then Phantom is somewhere in the middle. So it's kind of fun just seeing how people relate. So that's going to be fun.
I'm not entirely utilitarian. I pointed a cannon at a round window.
Okay.
I
I'm just
built a
saying, I want
second
your
floor that I'm
place.
not even doing anything with. It's just for kicks.
Have you built a proper bed yet?
I finally got the recipe for it like last night, I think.
Okay.
So
Because
I
I've been
haven't
going over
yet.
there for several days, and you've just been on a bedroll. Phantom had his bed up pretty quickly. I had my bed up pretty quickly.
Yeah, I didn't realize that I missed the essence trader in the first antiquarian forest. And so a whole bunch of stuff that everyone's like, oh, yeah, why don't you have this and that? It's like, I don't know, where am I supposed to get that? Oh, that guy? I guess I didn't even go to them.
Funny thing about that, and us talking about sandboxes versus theme parks and being on rails and everything is, sure, you might have missed that first one. Then I opened up your chest and you had like epic level infusions, like
Yeah, which
right
I
out the gate.
found in the tutorial, going in the little points of interest off to the sides and looting the hell out of them. And now, in hindsight, I regret not trying to bring all the reinforced lumber through that I could, because there were a lot of fake chests there. Oh well.
Yeah, there'll be plenty more. It's fine, but yeah, no, it's just part of the fun is just seeing how we're all playing a little bit differently and what we're focusing on differently. Where
What
we
I've
are in the
been
game.
what I've been kind of doing recently is looking over the attributes of some of the higher quality components that I've gotten and started looking at recrafting some of my gear, or maybe things that are like approximately side grade, seeing if I can kind of crank the attributes on those. And there's some things that are a little quirky with it, but with a little bit of understanding, it's not actually that hard to maximize. So now that I have a much better understanding of things, there's a lot more and a lot better stuff I can do with the things that I've got. And I've even started going above and beyond and starting to craft and apply specific enchantments and infusions and charms to boost up the gear even better in that way. So that's stuff that I do like to see. Now, one of the things that the augments makes me think about is more on the macro scale, like the mayoral responsibility and the freeholds. The idea, we're talking about Nightingale for a moment here. The idea of the freeholds. I mean, this is me bringing it back to Ashes. That what buildings you build will matter for what things you'll have available and what sort of branches of progression that are going to be coming off of it. And so right now, if I've put my stations down and I put my augments down in Nightingale in a way that I don't get all the things, all the recipes and everything in the way that I want to, it's easy for me to pick things up, move them away, bring them back around, and get the stations to work the way I want. The idea of that being a larger, a building size thing that requires time and effort and resources to, screw around and find out, that's going to be a lot more, especially in the earlier days of the game, a lot more of the challenge, and where I think a lot more of the friction and conflict is going to come from, like the local politics and conflict in that if somebody is not heeding the details of plans of the residents that they've already set down and laid out and been like, this is what we want, this is what we want, this is what we want. And the mayor's like, no, screw you. I'm going to use my resources to override you guys. We're making ponies here, and only ponies. And so, they start setting up all the animal husbandry buffs when that's not what this place has any business doing whatsoever relative to what the people there actually want. And so that's, not even to necessarily be like, hey, I'm trying to screw these guys so much as, well, what? I'm the mayor. I'm going to make these decisions. If you don't like it, you can spend the time and effort and resources to knock them down and build them back up. Maybe someone will bring a monster coin or something. Who knows? And so that's like the level of having to have faith in the leadership to adhere to a plan and hopefully having enough buy-in and consensus from the people that you're playing with to be able to figure out, this is what we want, this is what we want, this is how we're trying to build this place up. It may never be a metropolis, so with the city in mind as the highest tier, we're going to try to specialize it this way and that way, so we'll still be able to have metropolis level advantages on a few things. So that's the kind of thing that I'm thinking about with it. With Nightingale, I can pick things up, move them around, screw around, find out. It's cheap, it's quick, it's easy. I can continue to iterate on it with ease. When you get to the full Ashes game scale and scope, the amount of resources, the amount of time things will take to build up, there's going to be a lot of, I think, conflict and potentially cooperation about trying to figure out what you're going to build and how you're going to build it, so the residents there are able to do the thing they're trying to do to keep the place nice and potentially, bring it further and further up the hierarchy of tiers. So that's a lot of words to say what I probably could have said in a more consolidated manner if I was trying to write something into like 3 paragraphs. But rants are fun.
I don't think it's possible for you to write anything in 3 paragraphs. I've seen write
okay. No. I'll give you. There was a point where I didn't like school to the point where I tried to do the bare minimum, and I would still get A's because American grade school is kind of crappy sometimes. But then when I got to college, I had the opposite sort of thing where a 3 to 5 page essay, it's like, nah, like, I have a lot more that I want to say, and you want me to get a bibliography? Ah, crap. It's time to get out the red pen and start editing and paring this thing down. Maybe using a little bit less descriptive language here and a few less analogies there, and, see if there's entire points that I can just cut out and have it still be cohesive. So, at some point it changed. Is like, instead of words are work, it's, words are fun. And then the work was too many words. Like, I might be a terrible film director because I wouldn't want to get rid of any of that footage. I'd be shooting like B edits and like directors, comedy cuts and stuff like that. And just like, yeah, okay, it's the movie that you've seen, but now let me show you the dark and brooding version. All right. You didn't see half of those scenes before in the way that we depicted them. You want to see all the blooper reels in one? Here's the comedy version of the movie.
Be prepared for 3 hours of any film that Nero puts out. But I think mayors. I'm trying to think of where mayors will be able to do that on their own, because I think all of the node types will have a committee, bishops and things like that, that will also have a say in terms of what services can be built. But that's on the city level. And I'm wondering just on the individual level. So there's lots of other games that come to mind that we've been interested in. For instance, Landmark. I did not think of myself as a builder in Landmark with voxels. So what I liked to do is gather the resources for builders so that they could build the stuff that they want more easily, and then hopefully they'd be willing to build a little something for me or help me build something. But I was not really trying. I mean, I just was not good at the concepts of building at the voxel level. I actually reopened. I started playing Lego Fortnite, so I actually jumped into my regular Fortnite Save the World from, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And I was like, how the hell did I build that massive structure? Like, I had some kind of way of having traps and all this stuff. It was a huge layout that was still waiting for me to come back to. And I was like,
is the Save the World stuff still live? I thought they took it down at some point.
They did not take it down, so they aren't supporting it. Like, there's no new stuff, but I was able to go back into my old game and it kind of re-updates. So, because they've changed a bunch of stuff. So, they do give you some. It's something like, this is what you used to have, and now we've updated it. So you get credit for this and this and this and this and this, and then
Oh, that's nice.
But yeah, the base I built 5 years ago, I don't even know how I did that anymore.
With patience, iteratively between missions. That was the game.
Just the layout of it. I don't know how I put that together is what I'm saying. I mean, at some point I understood the details of how to get the traps here and these traps over there and all that stuff. But when I was looking at it after 5 years, I was like, I don't remember all the little details for that.
I could go back to the Action Script 3 for the Flash games that I made back in 2010 and stuff, and I would not probably be able to put bits and pieces together, except where I put so many comments that, like, there's no way I can mistake this part or that part. But even not really having advanced much as a coder, I'd probably also go through the whole time like, what the fuck was I doing? Like, this is terrible. Like, terrible bad. Very, very. Oh, well. So, yeah, I agree. I wonder if you came back to a game like Rift or New World or something, you could kind of build more expansively. Maybe not New World because you didn't get that much space, but something where you had a little bit more space to build. Would you go back to that game years later and be like, I don't know how I did this? Or would you come back and be like, yeah, that's my house?
I don't know, because I did not, and that's what I was going to ask about New World, because I did not do anything with housing in New World, and I'm wondering if either of you did anything with housing at all.
I put a little furniture in the apartment, but the reason why I didn't go hard on furniture making whatsoever is because it was a cosmetic sink. There were no benefits or bonuses for any of the items that you would put in your home, at least that I remember. So there was no point. It's an entire trade where you accumulate materials you could actually use to make useful things, and instead dump them into things to make your house look pretty. For some people, that is the game. That is the point. You make a nice, pretty house and your character nice and pretty, and the rest of the journey is just the journey. What's the destination? The next pretty thing I can put in my house, the next biggest house I can get. That's how it is for some people. And so for them, yeah, I understand it's worth the time and effort. For me, yeah, you're right. I'm a little more utilitarian. If it's not giving me buffs, I'll just go with like the cheesy ones I get from the quests and have a hodgepodge home, and that's that. I would say maybe a little different with Palea, because crafting one of each item is going to give you that continued experience and progression. So I am compelled to do that, so that way I have access to some of the tools and some of the decor that I'd actually like to have. And yeah, it might be cosmetic, but it also isn't a very painful process to try to accumulate the materials, and the materials per item wasn't so bad that it would really be that much effort to make any specific thing that I wanted. So it was a bit of a different thing, but that being the quote cozy kind of game, no actual combat and damage and health loss or anything like that. It kind of runs on a little bit of steam and hope if all you're looking for is the conventional MMO sort of grind. So the fact that using the crafting system as a way to continue to unlock the crafting system, but not in a way where you have to completely grind and make items over and over and over of the same level before you can ascend to the next level. That's not of interest. That is actually one of the things that I really want to know what they're going to do differently with Ashes for that. You're not just going to make a default copper dagger. Me with the copper available and the materials and stations and upgrades available for me in one location versus alternate me over in this other location, making the same quality of item with different materials. I would hope they're going to come out different. And I don't know if crafting one is going to start unlocking the specificity of, hey, if you use this one and this material together, you get a different effect. Or even taking a step back from that, is it even called a copper dagger? Is it even a copper dagger? Or is it just plain old dagger, hunter's knife? Sure, let's call it a hunter's knife. I make it from copper from one realm. I make, alternately makes it copper from a different realm. How much difference in variation is going to be in that? And then as we mix up and use different materials based on what we have handy, are we going to see differences and variations? Are we going to be able to start building out into those ones with more specialized effects and components? I would imagine at some point we would probably need to get out of the realm of copper if we want to do that. But that also makes me wonder, they've talked about materials being better from certain areas. Is there actually going to be, strong mountain copper versus soft forest copper or whatever, and they have, decidedly different properties? Maybe one's better for jewelry, but you don't know unless you have two different things of copper side by side. And it's like, what are the attributes of these? What if I put this one in? Okay, what if I put that one in and make one? That sort of thing. So I'm hoping that it isn't just going to be craft 50 daggers, crude daggers, and then you skill up enough to craft the next highest crude item, and you have to go through this, WoW-like progression of making 50 of everything and either selling it for pennies, throwing it on the auction house for pennies because everybody's making them too, or maybe if there's a salvage system, breaking them back down, hopefully gaining more skill on the process, or at least getting some of your materials back. That's something that I'm a little interested to see, and I'm really excited to see that in Alpha 2. So with all that in mind, what do you guys think of that? The variability of components going into things, making them look different, making them function different. I guess to bring it back to Nightingale for a moment, Diggs, you like certain specific materials and like the patterns that they provide. I've kind of become okay with using like it's apparently predator hides and forest fibers that make this dashing red and white, Sir Santa Claus sort of thing going on. It's fine. It's a look. Part of it's relative to the attributes that I get, though. So there's
a lot of
that.
pastels, a lot of washed out colors.
Mm-hmm.
It's different.
Yeah.
Because we can't pour vibrant ink in them yet.
So for people who haven't played Nightingale, part of what we're talking about, and we was talking about with the different items, crafting is heavily influenced by a lot of different stuff in Nightingale, which is part of the appeal, part of what makes it so fun and interesting, and probably part of why I played it for so long that I have. And how we could apply that to Ashes. There, what Neuro's talking about. So there are varying different qualities of leather, of wood, of hides, of ores, bars, metal bars, all sort of things. And you have to craft components of weapons. You don't just create the weapon. You have to, even shirts. You have to have, the thread. You have to have buckles, buttons. Weapons have to have the handle and the hilt and the blade, and so all of these different components contribute to the overall stats of the item. Well, not all of them do, we found, but most of them do.
That's actually part of the trick of it, is if it's attributes the item would natively have, you can enhance them with better materials, but you can just as easily throw away high quality materials, putting no attributes to no benefit on your items because they're none of the ones that have any crossover.
So different items contribute to different things. You might have metal bars that contribute to strength and to hit point regeneration, things like that. And then you might have hide that contributes to completely other stuff. And so you have to look at the weapon. What stats does the item, I should say, bring? And if you have a component, a subcomponent that doesn't actually have the same stats, then it's not going to contribute anything to it. But the type and quality of material that you use to build does matter. It does influence the outcome. You also then have what are called augmenting stations. So you have your crafting station that you're building these things on, and you can augment them with, some stations like have 8,
Yeah.
12 different augments. It depends. And they add different attributes to the item. Maybe it increases health, regeneration, or it might increase your stamina, or it might increase your your melee ability. Then you have the recipes are also different in gear score and how good they are. And then we have something called minor cards. So we collect cards, and they can influence various, almost anything you can think of with the world, the realm that you're in. But they so all these things basically, and then you can add enchantments to them, and all of these things obviously are at the end of the day change what your product is that you make. And it can then you go through upgrading from common to uncommon to rare to epic, and so it's a very complex crafting system. It's still very early. I think there are still a lot of tweaks that could be done to make it a whole lot better, but it's something
It's
that I
early
would
access.
love to see brought into something like Ashes of Creation. And I think it could be based off what we know.
Yeah.
Well,
There's
for one thing, Umbwa, I don't know how much sway he has outside of level design, but it does remind me of what Snipe Hunter and Umbwa were talking about with Chronicles of Illyria, and it reminds me, I think it's more Snipe Hunter's vision of the quality of the components. I think he was talking about cooking, so the quality of your pots and pans having a decent impact on the quality of the food that you're able to cook, and how that's going to affect you. I had a cool thing happen last night while I was playing. So I just made it to the watch, which is kind of the final area. It's like getting to where you're doing a lot of dungeons over and over again with other players. Thrown into like a automatic match system where you're doing dungeons with other players. So since I got there, I kind of took a little bit of a detour and finally started to try and focus on making other types of food besides the first one that you start really making, which is roasted meat. And so I got to a place where I was making tender steak. So I made like a stack of 10 the first time and finished the stack of 10 and went back to make another stack, and was running around. I ran out of food, so I started getting into my new stack, and it was not taking, like it was not giving. So like the roasted meat will it'll appease your hunger for 12 minutes. Tender steak will appease your hunger for 18 minutes. All of a sudden it was doing 0. It was like just like disappearing and doing nothing to appease my hunger. And I was like, what is happening? And I focused. I didn't make the tender steak. I made the interim one, which is seasoned raw meat. So basically, I was trying to eat raw meat, and expecting that to have some kind of benefit to my health.
tartar.
Obviously, probably eating raw meat is not a good thing. And I almost wish it gave me some negative stats, like acted as poison. But I was like, yeah, of course, raw meat is not going to help my health. I need to cook that into a tender steak. So I kind of like that level of impact, just in, realism, that sense of realism and immersion, that stuff does kind of make sense in the game. And so I did not understand at all what Snipe Hunter and Omblo were kind of championing with Chronicles of Illyria as they were talking about the details of um, their crafting system that they were thinking about. Because I don't know. Sometimes I think it uh, was it was it was it it was you, Nero, who were saying earlier today. Some of this stuff makes it feel like busy work, and that's what it sounded like in when they were describing Chronicles of Illyria. Even when they were talking about the different biomes and how you might have to change what you're wearing when you're traveling across the map because you hit the desert, so you're going to have to make sure that whatever you're wearing is going to keep you cool. If you then leave the desert and go to the Arctic, you're going to have to make sure you change your clothes in order to be able to survive in that. And I'm like, what? I love exploring, but I don't want it to be so detailed that I have to pack 4 different sets of clothing depending on where I'm going at any given time. And again, Nightingale for me kind of hits that. I've got my parasol that saves me from the heat in the desert and saves me from the hail when it's raining. Um, I'm not constantly changing, but it's affecting me enough that it feels immersive and that these things are useful.
I like to use
I
the
was going to,
parasol with a move speed bonus and a knife so I can move
well,
fast.
that
Move
too.
speed bonus stuff. And I go to the highest peak and I use the dodge to launch myself forward and then I glide. And then I launch myself forward and I glide. And yeah, it's a little more aggressive than a Mary Poppins sort of thing. I'm basically doing like an air dash and then glide, almost like I'm playing a 2D platformer game, which is cool. I like that. I like having that sort of thing available, just so long as I've got enough stamina, because boy, does that drain fast.
Yeah. What did you use for that in Landmark? It was
The shiny buttsuit glider.
no,
Oh no,
it was
it
no,
was
no,
the hook.
Palia.
In Palia, there was just a glider, but
Yeah,
in Landmark, there was a glider, I believe, along
it
with
wasn't a glider. It was a
the
line,
grappling
right?
hook.
The grappling hook. That's what it
I
was.
feel
Yeah,
like
the
no, I think
grappling
there
hook.
was I thought there was maybe a glider at some point too, but I could be mistaken.
No, it was the
But
grappling hook. That's what
yeah, I
everybody
mean
used
that's
to flit across the.
that's how I
Um,
roll. If I'm in a
mhm,
low
mhm.
gravity planet in Star Citizen, I'm going to set my tractor beam to attach and I'm going to slingshot my heavy armor ass forward because I got to say, I move real slow in my heavy armor with my heavy guns, but if it's low G, I can just slingshot myself and be out of the pack. I
Yeah,
like grappling
so
hooks.
I know I was looking forward to in Revival. We had just gotten to a place where we kind of had housing, um, instanced housing. So each person was able to purchase a home, an apartment, or a house, and we had some furniture that we could get, and we were just getting up to a place where we could kind of decorate. I don't think we were able to invite anybody over to the house yet, and I'm not even sure our avatars were moving around in there. I think it was just maybe even first person view, but we were just getting to a place where we could decorate. And when they were talking, Snipe Hunter and Ombwa were talking about decorating and Revival, I was thinking, yes, I'd love to be able to um, decorate and have parties and cook for them, cook for people. Hopefully the cooking will um, be diverse enough, and I don't know if it gives you stats or whatever, but even just for the RP of having people come over, and since they're over maybe to talk about a mission or whatever, you could have a little dinner party.
Or look at
But
the
then
creepy things inscribed in little corners.
Revival folded, like, I don't know, it seems like a month or two after we got, or weeks after we got that opportunity. Um, and then Palia, for some reason, I don't know what it is about Palia that the crafting there didn't really thrill me. Like, I mean, you're decorating, and I think kind of like Phantom was saying earlier, you're decorating. And I'm not sure why we're decorating. Um, Maybe because everybody was kind of decorating with the same stuff, but that's happening with Nightingale too. But the way people are um, using those decorations is different, I guess, because there are practical utilitarian bonuses that come with it. You're not just gonna be doing it for aesthetic reasons. I'm doing it mostly for aesthetic reasons, but those people who really want to focus on the bonuses might not. So it's looking a little bit different than Palea, because I think Palea, you pretty much just do it purely for aesthetics on the
No,
inside.
I would say purely for aesthetics, but with a little bit of a twist. Since it's not a, combat focused game where you're going to be fighting in tournaments, it seems like they do a lot of photo contests and tour contests to make the coolest looking place with the current seasonal stuff. So for people that are big into the game, it's get all the cool things and try to make something to compete in the next photo contest or housing tour contest thing. So it does have a competitive angle, but it's artists and musicians and stuff going to a place where they'll be judged and have their best ones featured. So still has a reward, and it's still rewarding to people that do it if that's their thing.
Yeah. I'm wondering, so Phantom, do you normally decorate? Do you normally do housing and decorate when you're
not at all.
playing?
No, I typically.
So why do you want to be mayors in games?
Huh? I don't.
I said so. Yeah, well, that was the funny thing is you wanted to be the bad mayor in Chronicles of Illyria and just see how long until people kick your.
That was pure theft. Yeah, that was pure. Like I'm gonna do everything I can to steal from the place that I ran until I was kicked out and just launder it all to other accounts. So yeah, the intent there was definitely not to build. I couldn't give a shit about building anything. I was going to steal
and destroy and pillage.
It looks like your portalarium is pretty well built up, though.
Yeah, I got to tell you, having to get hundreds of stone blocks and lumber and all of that, kind of pain in the ass, but it was fun. Yeah.
You had a little bit of help.
Yeah, Diggs did help. Trying to get everything functional, moving. Yes, it's okay. It's kind of lost its. There's a lot more I could do with it. I could go put lights in there and lamps, and I have no interest in doing that. So, got to use the portals during the day. Yeah, Mags. Yeah, I had it all planned out for COE, man. I actually had a second account that I'm pretty sure I've already publicly acknowledged, anyways, but with a completely different group. Which was going to be my true main, and I was just going to spy/steal whatever I could from the kingdom that I was originally a part of. So good times. There was a lot of playing in that game without even having a game. So
yeah,
but
yeah. But there's something about the combination of pure decor and also the bonuses, and Nero is kind of frustrated by getting all the lines so that you can see where, if you place it just so, you'll hit all the other stations and be able to give bonuses.
I think the problem I have now is that I have stations that are closer, stations and augments overriding the ones that I actually need that are slightly further away for cosmetic purposes. So I think I do just need to cram a cannon next to my stations and let that be that.
Because I think in Valheim, partially because I don't think I'm a good builder, just in terms of the concept of building the house and the layout of the house or the base. So I pretty much just would do what Neuro did in the beginning here, is just pretty much just set down crafting stations and have them kind of near each other, and then put up little shacks to make sure they would function when it's raining.
No. Castles and
Um,
Craft Shacks, Nightingale Edition.
um, well, that's what I did in Valheim. That was my Valheim. I wasn't that. I didn't really build a base. And what I liked about Valheim too is when DLP crew would play, then I didn't necessarily play at the exact same time, but I would jump in and fill their chests, like go gathering and then fill their chests so they'd have resources to continue to build, kind of like what I did with Phantom when we were starting with Nightingale. Um, uh, but there's something about this combo that has me both thinking, okay, if I want to wear this outfit, I have to have this particular station and I have to have this particular prop, and I have to have them in line with each other in order for it to appear. And I really want to wear this outfit. So I have to go get those resources. I have to build that station. I'm going to place it somewhere, in the vicinity. There's something about those the back and forth between those two that really has me immersed in the progression. I do also like, so this is interesting for Nightingale, that's different from Nightingale is a survival game, different than an RPG, because RPG has a lot more RNG in it, so random number generator, a lot more random numbers going in terms of what's going to drop from a mob. I really like the fact that in Nightingale, if I want something like a particular type of metal, I know I can go out and get it from this specific type of mob. And it might be somewhat random what mob will appear exactly when. But I can be pretty sure that if I farm a spider, I'm going to get chitin. If I farm a locust, I'm going to get bug meat from it. And that's going to inform the products that I produce later down the road. Like when I found out that chitin buffs your stealth, I decided to start making bug gear, and I made some bug ink so that I can get some stealth when I portal
You
into
need to get
places.
some
And
the fabled Bandersnatch hide. That stuff is so good for
I
stealth.
got some Bandersnatch hide. I'm not sure I like the color of it. I have to go back. I made something out of Bandersnatch, but I think I didn't quite like the color of it. Maybe it came out spotted somehow or something. I
Yeah,
don't know.
well, they look spotted, so that would definitely make sense. It's like red and black spotted, I think.
I mean, that's kind of a cool thing. And, when I was first crafting, it's like, yes, I would want to be able to dye what I'm wearing. And then it's like, oh, but it's actually matching the stuff that you're using. So that kind of makes sense instead of having to dye everything the color that you want it. Although it'd be nice to, maybe use blueberries to be able to dye stuff dark blue. That would be nice. So, but I'm wondering, Phantom. So, is there anything about the Nightingale crafting that has you looking forward to what crafting might be like on a freehold? No, you haven't thought about that.
Not really. Well, I mean, I don't know. We don't know enough. We know recipes, right, can be changed, but we don't really know exactly how. I don't know.
Well, we don't know, but I mean, so what I'm thinking though is now that I've played Nightingale,
I think
it makes me look forward to like I like the I like this idea of knowing that I can get certain stats. If I'm going to kill a dragon, I know that's going to give me fire stats, or I know that's going to give me blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Or I kill this thing and it's going to give me rain resistance. I like that idea that no matter what I might craft, I know it's very likely to give me rain resistance because that's just a property that comes along with that mob. And I would love to see that also in Ashes of Creation.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see. Hopefully, we will, and I think will happen. Where we'll see different types of material have different effects on outcomes. If I would, what I do like about Nightingale that hopefully pops up in Ashes is, any stat that is on an item, you have the ability to influence on craft of that item. It's not just you many times it's I can increase the wisdom stat, I can increase the stats strength stat. Like this you can literally increase everything. So um I look forward to hopefully having that. We've not really seen anything about quality of components, right? I have to go back through that stream. We know that different component or different ores and stone, all that have different qualities associated with them, or different stats, I should say. But I'm not sure about quality. I also like the augmenting process of crafting, that the items you use also influence the outcome of that. But I don't know. It's so hard to, I want them just to put out a game. So I don't want them to worry too much about all this at this point, like make it an expansion later on. The same with like building, that I mentioned, had a comment in the chat. I can just imagine, since you can PvP on freeholds, like imagine someone with the building UI up trying to place this wall just where they want it, and all of a sudden they're dead because somebody just came up from behind and killed them and took all their stuff, took the wood that they were trying to build with, so now they can't. I imagine that's also part of why they won't do any implementing of extreme building like we see in Nightingale and other games. But
Oh no, my guardhouse. I was trying to build it, but then I got killed, and now I can't get guards to guard me while I try to build. Yeah, I get where you're going with that one. I get the feeling it'd be a lot more like putting down the outline of the thing that you're trying to build and placing it, and then you're going to be running materials to it and dumping them in. So I don't know that somebody would be sitting there putting the walls in. And that's one of the things you even have at Nightingale. You can put down all the stuff you plan to build, and then it'll give you a total tally of the resources. And as you bring enough to complete the different parts, it'll autofill them in, and you'll make your progress.
The other part,
it is nice that that's a sort of feature, and I would imagine freehold building is going to have probably a lot more of that to it. Hopefully, even with the ability to put down structures that you know you're going to want to put down, but you can't do yet, so you can at least block out where the things that you want are going to be and get them positioned. So you're not committed that you put this thing down here, but it was 2 feet too far the wrong direction, and now you have to bust it down and rebuild it 2 feet over so you can squeeze the next building in beside it that you meant to get there. That's the sort of thing that I would kind of hope to see, not just planning for what you've got, but also being able to plan for the footprints of other buildings, essentially.
The other part that I think makes Nightingale just such a good experience in crafting at this point is the fact that you have to have all of these different subcomponents. It's not one or two; it's 4 or 5 different things that you have to actually create and craft, and you can mix and match. If you need 2 buttons, you can have 2 different types of buttons, and it's that part is also you just get exponentially more control over what you're creating. Which I guess on the other end of things, I always think back to like New World, where it's kind of random as to what you're going to get out of. Now you have some better control, but a lot of perks and stuff. It's random. So Nightingale, you really do, and you get to see the outcomes too, which is nice. It's not blind. You can see and it is additive. Like you can have two things that each contribute 30% melee damage, and together that's 60%. So it's an additive process. It doesn't just take like one of the top.
Yeah, and that is a level of specificity that makes it really nice that you can stack towards certain attributes for certain sort of things. If you want to build for stealth, health be damned, stamina be damned, max stealth, max move speed, there's ways that you can really specify into that. And so for people that are either trying to min-max or just have a particular build that they're trying to target, there's a lot of room for expression in the crafting system. Much better than I've seen in a lot of games. And to talk about the randomness, I kind of think back to good old Star Wars Galaxies. You wouldn't necessarily know until you're like really good in the system what a piece of material is going to do in making a piece of gear until you've made it and you've seen what it's going to be, and you can compare that relatively to other pieces. Once somebody actually knows what all the material components mean and which ones you want to have high values for the types of items you're making, that's when you get to a higher level of specificity. And then those are the materials that aren't hanging around. It isn't just like fields of feldspar forever that you can just mine and mine and mine. It's going to be some, wacky cryptobuzonium, and it's only going to be there for maybe 3 weeks. And you're going to need a higher capacity mining tool because it takes a lot more effort to get it. But damn it, that thing's got those properties. You're a top tier crafter. You are going out there. You're putting your things down. You're guarding them because those are going to be the new barrels for your top tier weapons that you're going to be selling to the top dollar because your stuff and people know your stuff. So that was a little obscure because there was so much having to understand the system and its nuances to be able to maximize in that way. And I felt like it wasn't really nearly as intuitive as the way that it's laid out, at least in Nightingale, where when I've got about half the components of an item in place, it'll show me the actual attributes of the item, what I'm going to make, and what their values are going to be. So if I want to, if I actually even want to make that item first, I can assess at that moment, do I want to commit the resources and effort to try to maximize this item, or will I be better off with, an alternate item that's, of a similar level range that's going to give me more of what I need, even if it's going to be a little bit lower overall quality. So that's one of the things that I'm really liking. And when I talk about Ashes, I always talk about the fact that my main goal is getting all the best of skills related to and associated to making bows and arrows that are specific to hunting corrupted targets. I hope it'll work for bounty hunters and people trying to clear the nature corruption as well. But my goal is really just where there's an orange crystal, bring my bows and start shooting. That's kind of going to be my thing for my character. So I really want to be able to see not only the specificity to make weapons of that type, but then leveraging on the Jim the Bowyer story that Stephen gave when he answered that question like 2 years ago. Instead of Jim the Bowyer being able to make strength-based bows and his cousin who replaces him making the dex-based bows or vice versa, that I would actually have the specificity to know I can make, bows that'll use this type of attribute or this type of attribute, but it's the other things that, give it the properties for, hitting the corrupted enemies as hard as possible. So being able to have that specificity to make the weapon catered for the build of the player that I'm making it for, and have that actually be a very, involved sort of process to be making high quality armaments for people that work exactly with the sort of things that they do. That's the sort of thing that really excites me, to actually have that level of control have that level of power, being able to, really do the thing. I compare it to WoW, where once I got maxed out in Gnomish and Goblin Engineering, the end game for me was undercutting everybody, doing like 50 cents for parts and, or I guess 50 silver for parts, and you bring the materials, no crafting fees over 5 gold. So people would be getting these rare recipes and, charging, 50 plus mats, 50 plus mats. Like, nah, 5 plus mats. Hello. And I'd do it, and I'd make the thing, and they'd be happy. And I built up enough resources to have one pre-built, so I could just trade it with the materials right then and there. So, yeah, it got lame because the only thing I can do to do more and get the goods in the hands of the players is to undercut everyone else. And, I don't mind doing that. Gold wasn't an issue. It just felt really lame that I, in vanilla, the original run, I hit just an absolute brick wall that there was really nothing I could do with. The only other thing I could do with it is make tons of grenades and stuff and devices that I'd use in PvP and frustrate the hell out of people being a one-man army. Which was the main reason I picked Engineer to begin with. They're the only ones who can use grenades. Great, extra stuns. Casting a spell, Earth Shock. Oh, you're casting another grenade. Oh, you're casting another Torrent Stomp. Oh, you're already dead because I've been pouring damage on you this whole time. That's fun, that's cool, but that's niche, and it's not something that's continuing to be iteratively progressive, which is more what I'm looking for in a crafting system. Learn more, do more, experiment more, be able to make things more correct for the people you're making it for, making your bespoke bows for the avid hunter.
In Nightingale, I noticed that the zombies are able to effectively make grenades and blow the crap out of you, but you can't then take their gunpowder and blow the crap out of them with grenades. Yet.
Early access.
So lots of aspects. It's fairly frequent that I'm playing Nightingale, and it is reminding me how all of the memorable moments in MMORPGs for me have nothing to do with risk versus reward. I'm just going to give one example today, and I'll probably give other examples in the weeks to come. But my example for today is when Terradin let us know that different types of resources can have different effects on your ink, which you use to make your portal cards, and those will give different stats to the realm when you load into the realm. I think she did a difference between like marigold and maybe barberry or something like that. And I was like, oh, wait a second. I can make pigment for ink out of bugs, and bugs have a stealth stat on them. What happens if I make realm cards with bug ink? And sure enough, I could make bug ink and give myself a stealth boost just on the portal card, not even on my actual gear, but I could do that. There's many different ways that I can boost my stealth. There's just stuff that surprises me that becomes the memorable moment. Like, oh my God, I didn't even know that was possible. That's awesome. Whereas I don't really have memorable risk versus reward because I'm usually trying to avoid risk, especially PvP and combat when I'm playing RPGs.
The more that it's been talked about, and partially because we still don't know enough about the systems, the more I'm leaning towards blue flag people that aren't doing PvP just not really being touched most of the time. I get the feeling that unless somebody's got a real chip on their shoulder because they feel like you snaked a resource from out from under them that they are also trying to get, I really don't expect that people are going to give themselves the opportunity to get corruption in exchange for a bit of extra materials from somebody who may have an almost empty bag.
Which could have been a thing that mitigates the PvP until you had the open seas.
That is definitely the one where I feel for you the most, because that's a very limiting factor. I would hope, here's my hope, that open seas activities can be out and done within an hour. So you're taking short voyages within your 1 hour of, okay, I'm willing to PvP now time. And so when you do actually have the urge, you're gonna get on a boat. You're gonna bring no material supplies, because why are you gonna do that? You're gonna bring something to be able to help you out on the water if the ship has some trouble or there's something to investigate under the water. And other than that, you may take some material damage to your equipment if you die, and you might see something really awesome. You might fight some really awesome monster and see some really cool narrative points. You might see constellations that weren't available during the daytime and on land. That's the sort of thing. It's a bit of, yes, there's the risk and reward, but it's also, your mileage may vary, and depending on your investment of time and what you're able to do, sort of thing. Like, if you go out thinking you might PvP and you play for an hour and the ship doesn't get attacked at all, do you feel like that hour was wasted, or do you feel like you got a free hour of not having to fight even though you were vulnerable to it?
I have no idea. I'm not going to be doing any risk versus reward. I'm not going to be doing progression. So there is no risk and no reward. So it doesn't matter. I'm just going to be exploring, and people can kill me if they want to, and I'll just...
What's your reward in Nightingale?
Why does open sea PvP even matter, though, then at that point? If you're not worried about progression, if you're just going to wear your starting rags, those will be easy to repair.
I'm saying there's it's just completely bypassed. There's no, right? So it doesn't matter.
Well,
PvP is irrelevant.
Things out in the ocean.
What's your reward? What's your risk and reward in Nightingale?
That's my point. I don't play for risk versus reward.
But it's present.
Is it? What's the risk?
In this setting, it's going to be the NPCs, typically.
You die and you don't make the corpse run. You died somewhere where you can't get your body back. That's probably about the most risky thing.
I don't think that's even possible. And I'm playing on easy, so there's no risk.
What's your reward?
I don't know that there's reward. I'm just doing stuff, and I'm able to do the stuff that I want. There's not much of a deterrent from me to... I mean, maybe time.
So you play on easy, so you don't go explore the extreme worlds.
No. I mean, I had to play... I think I had to play... I played Antiquarian Ascended Desert on hard because I had to get to a realm 100 in order to get gold. But I mean, I had an epic pick, so I was still basically two-shotting the mobs that were after me. And I just went over to get the gold, and I got the gold. It was actually kind of nearby, so I got plenty of gold in like 10 minutes and went back to my respite and started working on the stuff I wanted to.
So you avoid the extreme worlds due to your bearish nature?
Why would I go to extreme?
Higher yield stuff.
I'm just I'm primarily playing the story.
I mean, where I'm going with this is the equivalent of extreme is the open seas. I mean, if it's not something you want to go challenge yourself with, then you don't have to.
No, I mean, I think, I mean, right? I don't.
You're avoiding it because you don't want to do it, and that's fine. So you can avoid open seas.
I don't think so, because what's the so in Ashes, there is a map that is always there. So I'm going to be trying to explore that map.
Mhm.
In Nightingale, there is not a map that is always there. There's not a persistent map,
But there are many
right?
maps
So
to explore.
right, but you can't. There's no completion of exploring a map, right?
Kinda. I mean, if you've gotten
I
all the
can't
things from
explore.
all the
No,
points of interest.
I can't explore all the maps. That's what I'm saying.
Ah, I see what you're saying, because there are generative realms with different properties that you don't
Hmm.
expect that you would take the time and effort to exhaust each one of them at every level.
Hmm.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, there's a lot of, I haven't played anything on easy except maybe go into your place once.
Yeah.
But there are still worlds maps you avoid because of the extreme nature.
I don't think of it as avoiding maps that I don't
Well, you don't
think of it
play
as
them.
avoiding maps. I don't even know what that means. I just play on easy. There's tons of maps. There's never an end to maps. So I'm not avoiding maps. I'm just playing on easy.
You're avoiding some of them.
No, I don't think so.
All right.
When you say maps, are you talking about realm and major card configurations?
Mirror
Or
digs.
you?
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
'Cause-
that there are worlds out there that are being avoided due to the extreme Yeah, the realms
That
is what it's
doesn't
probably a
make
better word here.
that doesn't really make sense because there's infinite realms.
My point is you're avoiding content that is extreme because you want to play on easy. So you can
I don't
easily
think I'm
avoid
avoiding
content because it has PvP when you want to only PvE.
I don't think so. I'm
I
playing
think you
all the
choose
maps.
to avoid something.
I'm playing all the maps on easy.
And
So I'm not avoiding realms. I'm just playing all the realms
and
on
you
easy.
can play all the maps in Ashes of Creation, but they're hard mode.
Huh?
They're hard mode, like extreme.
Which is my point. I will be on the open seas with no progression. So it doesn't matter what people do. There's no risk because have nothing to risk because I'm not progressing and I can't, right? They can't impede my progression because I'm not trying to progress. So that's the way I avoid the risk versus reward there. And I'm not trying to get reward with anything except exploring the map.
All right. Well, we are now 7 minutes over.
Yep.
I did want to clarify real quick. I went and looked at the wiki while y'all were chatting. So, we talk about quality of components. They don't really use the word quality with crafting, but they do talk about rarity. So I think they are using rarity kind of interchangeably with what we would think of as quality. That the higher the level item, the more rare item brings different stats or higher quality stats. So hopefully that
right.
despite the naming difference plays out to be somewhat the same. One thing that
I would kind of want to see a little bit more specificity because they've talked about it in a way that it sounds like the iron from up the hills and the wood from deep in the forest and the I don't know, brine from a salty desert oasis are going to have more quality to them potentially than the stuff that you have locally at a place that's kind of maybe in between all three of them. And the idea is that they want you to go out further than where you're at to potentially get different materials that are of higher quality or high variance in what the features have within a certain type of material. There's definitely different grades and different sort of properties to ores and such of the same type of material. Even in the real world, where there's certain things that you would want to use for certain applications based on those properties. And so I think there's, just an easy example, meteoric iron having all those cool little squiggles in it when you make cool metal tools out of it, or like a chef knife. And so functionally, is meteoric iron, is Damascus iron any better or stronger than just normal pig iron that you would have found 200 years ago at ye old blacksmith or something? That's sort of the thing that I'm talking about with, they're all iron, but they're going to give you different properties and components, and relative to what you're trying to do, you might want to select for them or you might not. You might realize the guy who's trying to give you Damascus metal is actually just taking a bunch of different scraps of similar metals that are a little bit off and a little bit different grades. Like I've seen somebody, use ball bearings for this even, and make a kind of like a second rate version of it where it kind of has that Damascus steel look, but it has little round patterns, almost like not like a cheetah print, but polka dots, industrial polka dots. Looks cool. I don't know that it's actually going to be any stronger. I don't know if the materials they used are going to be more rust resistant than good old stainless. Not even stainless steel is the same. You'll get some that it's basically stainless, but unfortunately they didn't quite get it right, and a magnet will stick to it and it'll maybe get rusty, but it was close. Anyway, that's, I think, most of what I had to say on the subject. We'll really have to see how it shakes out in Alpha 2. How much it's going to shake out not only in Alpha 2, but when Beta starts. I think that's when a lot of the systems they intend to have are really going to be gelling together and locking in, and that's when they're going to be working more on stitching the rest of the game world together and getting everything all fully integrated and functional. So they have, I would say,
you said.
Well, they're going to have between the beginning of Alpha 2 to the beginning of Beta 1 to get everything set and solved. I don't know how long Alpha 2 is going to go. I don't know how long the gap is going to be in between. I hope it's going to be a smaller gap. I hope Alpha 2 is going to go for a good long time, because it sounds like they're going to be implementing a lot of systems and mechanics while we're there testing and playing them. So it's it's going to be that they've got the game at a point where it's now been made stable, but they can still continue making progress without having to break things constantly for us to be able to continue testing and playing and enjoying and spreading the hype and the love and all of that sort of stuff. But it's definitely going to be seeing a lot of progress on its features and systems. So it could be that the sort of crafting we're talking about now is in the plans, but it won't be there on day one. And, that would be a very pleasant surprise to me if it isn't till Beta 1 or even Beta 2 where they start putting in the specificity of materials from different places of a similar type, not including the rare versions of things, to really expand and enhance the already very intriguing crafting system that I think is already going to be pretty amazing. I think there's things to learn from Nightingale. I have to imagine a bunch of the devs are playing it. I don't have a bunch of devs whatsoever on my Steam or anything, so I can't look at the list and be like, yep, that guy, yep, that lady, yep, them, yep, and be like, okay, I know these people are playing it and getting influenced by it, but it's a game that's doing well enough and is, it's got some features that cross over. So I do hope that they at least, take some time and play it a bit, maybe get a weekend group going with the studio or whatever.
I'm hoping they're not making significant changes based on influence from another game like Nightingale, I hope that they're already thinking of similar stuff, especially since some of the people on staff have talked about that kind of stuff before. And they're also using Unreal Engine 5, and it makes that stuff kind of easier. So I just hope there's some crossover. Like, I'm hoping Nightingale is a window into what actually is available fairly easily these days. I mean, that's kind of what was the hope when I was first hearing about Ashes of Creation, is that nodes sound similar to the concepts they were talking about in EverQuest Next. And when people say, Diggs, why are you supporting this game when you don't like PvP? I'm really supporting it because I want designers to be able to quickly design systems similar to nodes and those building city systems that we heard about in EverQuest Next. Even if I don't play them, I'm hoping that it will become easier to make systems like that in the future for games that I would like to play. So, and it seems like Unreal Engine 5 is actually making that easier. So I'm curious to see how that will play out in Ashes of Creation.
The last thing I will say on this whole process is the processing of components in Ashes of Creation appears to leave a lot to be desired compared to what you're doing within Nightingale. I should further state in Nightingale, I might need to make the pull part of a weapon. Well, that might actually itself take also 2 or 3 different items to create the handle. And again, the whole step of the way, each of those items are contributing to that final product that then is a subcomponent of an even bigger product. Versus Ashes of Creation, where we are quite literally going to someone else that processes our work for us, and we have no actual control ourselves. So, anyways,
Well,
hopefully
that's
they
what
improve
friends
that.
are for. That's what friends are for. Get your friends to help you make the stuff, and then you'll be able to ask
Well, you
them
have to take him to the
to do
NPC,
what you
right?
would like.
That's what I'm saying. It's an NPC that does it for you. You queue it up, and yeah, that's what it. Remember, that's the whole stream processing stream. You got a guy with a sawmill cutting lumber for you.
Yeah, but there is some amount of player skill that will be, or not player skill, character skill that'll be applied to being able to do stuff too. So I don't think all of it's going to be manual NPC stuff going on only. Otherwise, why do players even have refinement skills whatsoever? That would make no sense. So maybe on your freehold, with the freehold machine you're powering with fuel, that you've got somebody that's operating it for you, and maybe their skill is relative to the skill of somebody who owns or takes residence on the freehold. But I think when they had told us that it isn't just like you can be one master and one thing only ever and that's it, and instead that there's your mastery, and then your expert, and then your journeyman, that you have kind of this pyramid of things you can build up with until you're at the point where you are making the greatest anti-corruption bows in the world. I would imagine a lot of the crafting I'm going to be doing along the way will still get my gathering and refining skills in pretty good shape, so I can get a lot further without having to do a lot of trade. But yes, there will get to be a point where either because they're commissioning it for me and they're providing the resources, or because I'm trying to make things in a certain sort of way because it's the sort of thing that people are looking for, being able to apply some amount of trade to get the stuff that I need to make those things, and really have them be as pristine and effective as possible for the sorts of things they're going to be doing.
That's kind of interesting that you mentioned that to me, Phantom. It's interesting to me that you mentioned that because earlier this morning, maybe later last night, I played the lumber mill miner card in order to be able to more quickly. Oh, it was because I was getting lumber for your 24 portal stations. Um, so that helps you refine wood bundles into lumber more quickly. So I played the lumber mill miner card. And I wonder, with relation to Ashes of Creation and NPCs working the lumber mills, if that's going to be an aspect of a service. So if your node has invested in creating a lumber mill as a service, maybe they're better at that than some other
Yeah.
node who did not invest in that.
Yeah.
And that's going to have an effect. So that node becomes known for being great at lumber. Um, and even if it's through NPCs, that's an interesting thing.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be. Yeah, you're right. That will be their equivalent, depending on where you take the service building. You might have faster processing times, increased yields, maybe better quality or rarity of yield as well. That's all going to be a part of this too. 24 portals. The idea was to have one open for each of the extremes, and anyways.
That's a lot of configurations. Quite the project. I don't know that I'm going to go to that extent. For realms that I know I need to open for quest stuff, I'm probably going to leave those open. But when it comes to the extreme stuff, I don't, let me get there first before I start worrying about it, because I imagine there's going to be higher tier realm cards along the way to get to that are, even at medium, are going to be difficult.
That's one of the things that I love about this multiplayer situation, because Phantom has 24 for his portal station. I have 5 for my meager little portal station that's right by the portal. 2 of them are designated, one for Nero, one for Phantom. And then I have 3 that will take me wherever else I want to go, and anybody who comes to my tavern, anywhere else they want to go. And then Phantom, I think he has 5 right now, if I remember correctly. And I would think he might have a couple of more. I'm expecting he'll be somewhere in between me and Phantom when it comes to how many portals he has. But that's the beauty of multiplayer, is being able to visit other people's places and seeing what they're doing.
And the idea
the caveat that there's not really much limitation. They could just walk in and screw your stuff up.
Yeah, that's the problem right now. You could tear down anything if you wanted. But no,
and I did. I tore down one of your walls while I was organizing your bags, and it was like, oh my God! But I was able to put it back up. Thankfully, I saw you do the same thing when you were also rearranging your bags.
I've broken all kinds of crap. Yeah, it's annoying. No, the rationale, you have your 4 biomes, or forest, swamp. No, you have your 3: forest, swamp,
desert, forest, swamp, and desert.
Yeah, and so was to have one of the ascended of each. At extreme, and then some others to add some minor cards too. So, anyways, I'll come back when there's more content. Well, we are well over our normal time at this point. Didn't get to any forum stuff, but hey, that's perfectly fine. This was a game we're playing, and an easy way to sort of coincide it with Ashes of Creation. So we, I believe, will be back here next week. I don't think anyone has any reason not to be. We still do not know the exact date of the next live stream, so we'll see. I am guessing that they will probably let us know, and potentially start having their question threads. So we might have some to look through there. But there's a lot that I want to go in on the forums next time. So I think I've not really normally done this. I switched back to the Theory Forge account, and Vladis, for those of you who don't know Vladis, he is an Ashes of Creation content creator. He is currently live, and I think I'm going to see if I can't do the raid command and sit everyone there. So, we appreciate you watching us either live or on recording afterwards. I've also started putting everything on Spotify and whatnot. So if you like podcasts, you rather listen to things rather than watch it is there as well. So everyone have a great week, and we will see you back here next Sunday. See you.
Mhm.
Bye-bye. See you then.